What happens when one of Hollywood's most revered actors walks into what should be a routine morning show interview, only to be blindsided by a host with an agenda? Samuel L. Jackson believed he was there to promote his latest film. What he got instead was a carefully orchestrated ambush by George Stephanopoulos, one that would turn a standard press appearance into one of the most explosive moments in recent television history. The tension, immediate, the accusations, relentless, and Jackson's response absolutely legendary. Make sure you subscribe and drop a comment, because what unfolds next will make you question everything you thought you knew about live TV interviews. It began like any other morning at Good Morning America. The studio buzzed with its usual energy as Samuel L. Jackson took his seat, adjusting his signature leather jacket and flashing that unmistakable grin that had charmed audiences for decades. He'd done this dance 100 times before. Plug the movie, tell a story or two, share a laugh over coffee. Today was supposed to be just another 10-minute promo for his new thriller. George Stephanopoulos shuffled papers behind the desk, his face unreadable. The cameras rolled. The lights came on. And millions of viewers across America tuned in for what they thought would be a light-hearted segment. "We're back with Academy Award nominee Samuel L. Jackson," Stephanopoulos said, voice steady, polished. "Samuel, thanks for being here." "Always a pleasure, George," Jackson replied, casually leaning back. "Good to see you again." But something was off. Jackson noticed it instantly. The forced smile, the rigid posture, the look in George's eyes that said this wasn't going to be business as usual. "We're here to talk about your new film," Stephanopoulos began. "But I think our viewers would be more interested in your recent comments about the film industry and certain political figures." Jackson's brow lifted slightly. The calm was still there, but something flickered beneath the surface. "Controversial comments," he said. "I'm not sure what you're referring to, George." "I came here to talk about the movie." George leaned in, scenting blood. "Come on, Samuel. You know what I'm talking about. Your criticism of how Hollywood treats veteran actors, your remarks about certain network executives, and, of course, your comments about media personalities who, quote, don't know their place." The room fell dead silent. Jackson's face shifted, confusion giving way to calculation. He knew now. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was a setup. "I think there's been some confusion," he said, voice cool but edged. "I came here to discuss my work, not to be interrogated with quotes ripped out of context." George didn't back off. In fact, he pushed harder. "Out of context. These were direct quotes, Samuel. You called out anchors who, and I quote, think they can push around guests just because they have a platform. Were you referring to anyone in particular?" The cameras caught every twitch of Jackson's expression. The dawning realization that this wasn't a conversation. It was a trap. He straightened, his gaze sharpening into the icy intensity that had defined so many of his iconic roles. "You know what, George," he said slowly, voice dropping into that unmistakable, simmering tone. "You've got this backwards. You invited me here under the pretense of discussing my film. Instead, you're trying to turn this into a gotcha segment. That's not journalism, and it sure as hell isn't respectful." But George wasn't done. Emboldened, he went further. "I think our viewers deserve transparency, Samuel. When a public figure makes comments could be seen as threats or intimidation tactics. Don't we have a duty to call that out?" The word threats hit the air like a detonator. Jackson sat forward, the movie star charm evaporated. What remained was raw steel. "Threats," he echoed, voice rising, controlled, but barely. "Did you just accuse me of making threats on national television? Are you out of your damn mind?" The tension inside the studio was now unmistakable. Thick, electric, impossible to ignore. Crew members exchanged nervous glances. The teleprompter operator froze, hands hovering above the controls. Everyone on set realized they were no longer witnessing a promotional interview. This had become something else entirely. George Stephanopoulos, suddenly aware he was no longer in control, tried to steady himself. But the shift in momentum was obvious. His voice had lost its edge, its certainty. "I'm simply asking you to clarify your previous statements," he said, reaching for calm. "When you said certain media personalities need to learn their place, what exactly did you mean by that?" Samuel L. Jackson didn't flinch. He leaned forward, locking eyes with Stephanopoulos, unblinking, unwavering. And when he spoke, his voice was slow, precise, every syllable dipped in steel. "What I meant, George, and what any reasonable person would understand, is that journalists should focus on journalism. Not performance, not clickbait, not fishing for outrage." But clearly that message went right over your head. The live audience, silent until now, began to murmur. They felt the temperature in the room rising, the hostility tightening like a noose. This wasn't just tension. This was escalation. Stephanopoulos, visibly rattled but unwilling to back down, made a fatal error. "Well, some might say your reaction right now proves my point," he said, "about your temperament and your ability to handle criticism." The moment the words left his mouth, everything shifted. Jackson's expression changed instantly. Gone was the light tension, the restraint. In its place, a slow, burning fuse about to reach the powder keg. He sat back in his chair, a smile spreading across his face. But it wasn't warm, it wasn't amused. It was the kind of smile audiences had seen in his films, right before the monologue that burns itself into pop culture history. "My temperament," Jackson repeated, dragging out the word as if savoring it. "You want to talk about temperament, George?" He leaned in again, not with aggression, but with purpose, with presence. "You've been behind that desk for years. You think that little platform gives you the right to ambush your guests, twist their words, and call it journalism. And you want to talk to me about temperament." Stephanopoulos shifted in his seat. The confidence he wielded just minutes ago was draining from his face. His posture sagged. His gaze flickered. He knew now. He had crossed a line he couldn't uncross. "Samuel, I think you're overreacting," he said, voice cracking ever so slightly. "I was just trying to have an honest conversation about your public statements." Jackson laughed, and the sound was cold, hollow. "A warning? Honest conversation?" he echoed. "Is that what you're calling this? George, you brought me here under false pretenses. You've been misquoting me since I sat down, and now you want to gaslight me into thinking this is normal." He leaned forward again, his voice cutting through the silence like a blade. "Do I look stupid to you?" Camera operators were working overtime, capturing every frame of the unfolding confrontation. This was no longer an interview. It was a live dissection of ego, of power, of credibility. And Jackson had taken the scalpel. "I resent the implication that I brought you here under false pretenses," Stephanopoulos said weakly. But the words fell flat, empty and powerless against the force of what Jackson had become. "We're just having a discussion about issues that matter to our viewers," George added, his voice grasping for legitimacy. Jackson didn't let it slide. His tone hardened. "Issues that matter to your viewers," he said, voice rising. "Or issues that matter to your ratings, because let's stop pretending, George. This isn't about journalism. This is about you trying to manufacture a viral moment at my expense." He sat back, voice low and final. "And the problem is, you picked the wrong man to try that with today." Stephanopoulos tried to steady the unraveling interview, leaning on his years of experience handling high-pressure moments. "Samuel, I understand you're upset," he said with a practiced calm. "But if you could just take a moment and—" "Calm down," Jackson interrupted, his voice low and loaded. The words hit the air like a warning shot. His eyes sharpened with a fire that silenced the room. "Did you just tell me to calm down on national television, after ambushing me with twisted accusations and misquoted sound bites? Are you out of your mind?" The studio went dead quiet. Only the hum of the cameras dared to move. Jackson wasn't yelling, He didn't have to. His tone carried the weight of command, the same energy that made audiences lean in and villains back down. Stephanopoulos shifted, visibly sweating beneath the lights. His voice cracked with retreat. I wasn't trying to ambush you. I was simply asking for clarification on public statements. Clarification! Jackson leaned forward, his presence overwhelming. Clarification based on what? Gossip blogs. Clickbait headlines. You're treating sensational garbage like it's Pulitzer-worthy material. That's not journalism. George, that's exploitation. The host scrambled to recover. I think you're being unfair. Unfair. Jackson's laugh cut through the tension like a blade. Unfair is inviting someone to promote their work and then trying to publicly humiliate them. Unfair is twisting context into controversy and calling it content. You're not here to inform. You're here to provoke. Stephanopoulos glanced around the studio, looking for backup, but met only frozen faces. The control he once held was gone, buried under the avalanche of Jackson's righteous fury. Samuel, he stammered. I think there's been a misunderstanding. Jackson shook his head slowly, a mix of disappointment and disdain in his gaze. Oh, there's definitely been a misunderstanding, George. You misunderstood who you were dealing with. He rose from his seat, his full stature towering over the desk, casting a long shadow across Stephanopoulos' frame. The audience was silent, transfixed by the rawness of the moment. You thought I was some desperate actor you could toy with. You thought you could corner me with sensationalism, and I'd just play along. That was your first mistake. The atmosphere crackled. This wasn't morning television anymore. This was a reckoning. Your second mistake, Jackson continued, his voice rising in power, was thinking your little gotcha questions could rattle me. I've been in this business longer than you've been on television, and I've faced sharper manipulators than you. Stephanopoulos, out of his depth, attempted a pivot. Maybe we should move on to discussing your film. Oh, now you want to talk about the film? Jackson scoffed. After 10 minutes of character assassination dressed as journalism. A little late for that, don't you think? The host tried to string together a defense, but Jackson wasn't finished. I never intended to attack your reputation, George muttered weakly. Jackson stepped closer, every word like a hammer. Intentions don't matter, actions do. And your actions today have shown everyone exactly who you are. The studio lights seemed to dim under the force of his presence. Stephanopoulos looked small, hunched in his chair like a reprimanded schoolboy. The power dynamic had flipped completely, and everyone knew it. You want to know the real tragedy? Jackson asked, his voice now calm but icy. You had a chance to have a meaningful conversation about the craft, the work, the industry. But you traded that for a cheap ratings grab. George opened his mouth to respond, but Jackson raised a hand and silence returned. I'm not done. You wanted an interview with Samuel L. Jackson. Congratulations. You're getting the full experience. He stepped back slightly, voice unwavering. Respect is a two-way street. You offer it, you receive it, you revoke it. And this is what happens. Beads of sweat formed on Stephanopoulos' brow as the gravity of the situation sank in. This wasn't a segment he could cut or spin. This was live, and he was being dismantled in real time. You sit there in that chair, every morning acting like an authority, Jackson said, his voice now thunderous with truth. But authority isn't a title or a teleprompter. It's earned through experience, wisdom, and integrity. None of which you've demonstrated here today. Samuel, please. George croaked. Let's resolve this. Jackson's final laugh was dry and brutal. Resolve it. You don't resolve years of smugness and condescension in 5 minutes. This isn't a misunderstanding. This is exposure. And today, you showed the world exactly who the hell you are. The camera didn't miss a second. As Samuel L. Jackson began to pace, there was a precision to his movement. Controlled, deliberate, and dangerous. He wasn't just responding anymore. He was in command. Across from him, George Stephanopoulos sat frozen, watching as his carefully constructed credibility crumbled in real time. You want to know what I really think about media personalities who forget their place? Jackson said, pivoting sharply to face the now visibly shaken host. I think they're insecure little people who use their platforms to tear others down because they don't have the talent or the integrity to build anything of their own. Each word landed like a punch. Stephanopoulos flinched. Not physically, but emotionally. His former confidence now reduced to silent desperation. The man who once ruled the interview chair was sinking fast. Jackson's voice softened, but his disappointment was unmistakable. The saddest part, George. You probably think you're doing good journalism. You think that ambushing your guests and manufacturing controversy makes you some kind of hard-nosed reporter. But it doesn't. It makes you a bully with a microphone. Stephanopoulos made one last, pitiful attempt to salvage the moment. I never meant to bully you, Samuel. I was just trying to do my job. The Jackson stopped mid-step and locked eyes with him. His stare cut deeper than any insult. Your job is to inform, to ask real questions, to spark real conversations, not to blindside people to feed your ego or chase a viral clip. A suffocating silence followed. Even the usual hum of the studio, cameras whirring, producers whispering, seemed to vanish. Everyone was waiting. Then, Jackson turned and looked across the room. He wasn't just talking to George anymore. He was speaking to the crew, the producers, the audience, and everyone watching at home. You know what, George, he said at last, his tone calm but resolute. I came here to do a professional interview. But since you decided to turn this into something else, I'll leave you with a little free advice. Stephanopoulos straightened slightly, maybe hoping for an off-ramp, some gesture of forgiveness, a reset. He didn't get one. The next time you try to ambush a guest, Jackson said, dropping his voice to that deadly calm whisper he's made iconic, make sure you're ready for them to fight back. Because not everyone's going to sit quietly while you twist their words and tear down their character for clicks. Then came the moment that sealed it all. Jackson unclipped his mic. It was subtle, but unmistakably powerful. He was removing himself, physically and symbolically, from Stephanopoulos' control, taking his voice with him. I'll be promoting my film elsewhere, he announced, no microphone needed. His voice still filled the studio. Somewhere they know the difference between journalism and cheap ambush tactics. Stephanopoulos didn't move. Couldn't. He sat there frozen. As Jackson walked away, humiliation settling over him like a weight he couldn't shake. At the edge of the set, Jackson paused and turned one last time. The final blow came not as a shout, but a dagger. Oh, and George. His voice rang out, clear and sharp. Next time you question a man's temperament, make damn sure you're ready for him to show you what real temperament looks like. And with that, Samuel L. Jackson exited the Good Morning America set, leaving behind a stunned studio, a broken host, and a moment of live television that would echo across news cycles, social media feeds, and reputations for years to come. The cameras kept rolling, catching Stephanopoulos slumped at his desk, staring at the empty chair where a legend had just sat, and then stood up. There would be no spin, no clever edit, no PR statement strong enough to undo what just happened. He'd gone looking for a viral moment and ended up in one he'd never lived down. What did you think of this explosive confrontation? Did Samuel L. Jackson handle it the right way? Or should he have taken a different path? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more unforgettable showdowns from the world of entertainment.